Hello and welcome to the Rask Network. What you're about to hear and see is limited to general financial information only. Please be sure to speak to your financial planner or refer to our financial services guide available at rask.com.au/FSG before acting on the information. All right, Jason Derulo. Jason Derulo. Whew. All right. Here we go.
Past contributions, contribution splitting.
Just mentioning. Did Jamie get back to you?
Yeah, he's no good.
Okay, cool. Welcome to episode 4 of this retirement mini-series. I am joined by partner in crime, but also in podcasting, Drew Meredith. How are you going?
Pretty good. It's question number 242 of 25.
So we are drilling Drew on 25 questions across 5 episodes in this mini-series. Usually you'd be hearing Drew and I every Saturday morning at 7 a.m. on the 2 cents edition of the Australian Investors Podcast. But we've pre-recorded this episode. Would you believe it? And we will be back soon to answer your questions each and every week. But we had so much demand about retirement advice, and so many people wrote in to get a copy of his and Jamie's new book, which is The Golden Years: How to Plan a Happy and Financially Secure Retirement. And if this is your first time watching the podcast on YouTube or listening, you will know that I often forget the subheading and just make it up. But I've got it here, so I remember it. So we are talking about retirement. And over the past few episodes, we have given you 5 broad questions in each episode. It's like a medley soup. We do not put any structure behind these, so you've got to listen to all 5 episodes in order to pull the insights that you need from each episode. And they're short, 20 to 25 minutes max.
I feel like it's like our brains work.
Yes. Yeah. If you looked at my bookshelf, there would be Harry Potter right next to Poor Charlie's Almanac. And you'd be thinking, what's inside this guy's head? So that's how we run these podcasts. But it's actually a really interesting thing. And we are talking about all different types of things as it relates to finance, investing, and retirement. Now, this first question is quite a topical one, Drew. And it has both a political orientation, perhaps, but also not really. And who cares? Because it's a positive thing for couples. What are some strategies to help bridge the gender divide on super? We do know that women tend to have less inside super for various reasons, like having kids, taking time away, but also starting later with the superannuation system. So what are some strategies to help bridge the gender divide on super? Secondly, this is all part of one question. How can you boost your partner's super?
And this is something one of the first things we look at. So naturally, when we're meeting couples in their 50s, I'll agree, there's a divide between the two. And a big strategy point for our team is how do we balance those? One, for equalisation, but also to maximise the tax benefits that family is getting out of superannuation anyway. So there's a few more, not complex ones, but there's different ways to contribute more. There's spouse contributions, where you essentially get a tax benefit for doing it. There's where you're contributing a non-concession on behalf of your spouse. There's called contribution splitting, where you split a portion of your concessional contributions into your spouse's name. One of the more popular ones we've been using lately is as you said before, if it's lower income or different careers, then the spouse might have a balance of carry forward concessional contribution. So they haven't used the full $27,500 for the last 5 years. You can actually use all that in 1 year if you have the taxable income to use the deductions for. So that's one way to get a bit more money into superannuation. But probably where we look more so once you get to your late 50s, around that 60 mark and into your 60s, is there's strategies where you can actually withdraw money from from the partner with higher superannuation balance, and make a non-concessional contribution into the other partner.
Tell me more about this, Drew.
I think this is the most straightforward way to equalise it. So if you've turned 60 and you've met a condition of release,
yes,
and
so you can access
retired, or you could have turned 65, maybe your spouse is younger, or even if they're not, as long as they're under 75, they can still contribute. Essentially, you can pull out as much as you want if you've met a full condition of release. It comes into your shared bank account or into your own bank account, then you contribute it into your spouse's name into their superannuation account. So you could do under the same non-concessional contribution.
So you're not claiming a tax deduction?
No tax deduction. That's probably more they bring the carried forward contributions.
Yep.
You could do $110,000 per year, or $330,000 in a single year, or from next year, $120,000 per year, or $360,000 in a single year using the bring forward.
When he says next year, means next financial year.
Yep, next
July
financial year.
1st.
Yep. Yeah, not far away.
Yep.
Essentially, that's one of the quickest ways to balance. So if one spouse has 1.5 million, the other one has 500,000, you can build a strategy around $100,000 a year for the next 10 years or for the next 5 years, and it quickly balances those two. Okay. Obviously, there's considerations like, are you selling investments to do it? Is there any capital gains tax? Is there any tax taking it out? But if you're over 60 and retired and drawing a pension, it's fairly straightforward.
If you're younger and your partner's not working, be they man or woman, you can do an after-tax splitting contribution strategy, which is effectively like if I put money into my super fund and my wife's not working, you can split that contribution to a superannuation fund.
Yep.
And there are links available on most superannuation fund websites on how to do that. That's a very common strategy when people are accumulating. Obviously, what we're talking about today is retirement. So it's quite different. But you can use that on the way up, as well as co-contributions and these types of strategies that you can maximize through shared bank accounts and what have you. This is a good way to do that. And it also, not only does it add good financial benefits and tax benefits to someone's situation, it can also be good juju, as they say, Drew, because it ends up, people feel better about their super balance. The couple feels better. They're a stronger relationship as a result.
We actually, when we had the question earlier about how do you engage the other partner in conversations, this
Episode
is
1.
This is a proven way that you identify the inequality between super balances, and that definitely brings attention to it. And then you've got a strategy to execute it, and we've found that is highly engaging.
People can end up with unequal super balances for a variety of reasons. The garden varieties include one person starts a business, the other person does not. Another one is someone's employed in the higher education sector, like at a university, where they get 17% super or something outrageous, and the other person gets the standard rate and doesn't make extra contributions. So there are many different reasons why someone can end up with a different super balance, not just because of this whole gender thing, but just keep that in mind. So it could be open to anyone. In a practical sense, Drew, how do I actually access super? Everyone says, when you hit the age, you can go and access your super. What does that actually mean?
Lots of paperwork.
Okay, tell me more.
Or an app.
Or an app?
Yep.
Oh, that sounds
I think the
good.
apps work too.
I think I'd take that option. Go for it. Tell me more.
So it depends on...
Depends on many things.
On which type of super fund you have.
Okay.
Like if you're in an industry fund, so Australian Super, Australian Retirement Trust, or you're in a corporate super plan.
Like a big super fund.
Mercer, I keep saying Mercer, or
Telstra.
Hub24 if you're an advisor, that's different. Essentially, once you have met a condition of release, or sometimes before, you can do multiple things. You can prepare a form that says you'd like to take a lump sum out of your super. In the same way, you could complete a form that says you'd like to commence a pension. How does that physically work? Accumulation, which is when you're still contributing and you're not drawing a pension, is a different phase of superannuation to pension. You're still paying tax at 15% in accumulation and 10% on capital gains. In pension phase, you're paying nothing. So you actually have to...
So it like triggers something.
Exactly. So for big, multi-scale or big scale super funds, you actually have to pull that out of that account and put it into another account. In most cases, it's called an income option or an income stream option. And it's actually separating those assets into a separate account.
So if I'm with Australian Super, one day I wake up and they've put it in a new account. It's still in my same login.
You put the form in, then
they'll send
next
me a
day,
message.
week, whatever it is, they'll ask for your tax fund, all that sort of thing. You do a form and then they'll set it up and they'll say, when do you want it paid? Do you want it annually, monthly, quarterly, weekly? And you can determine that, and you can determine how much.
Okay.
The only thing that there's limit that is on there is you have to draw a minimum, 4% if you're under 65, then 5% over, and then it keeps increasing. And there's some very rare cases where there's a maximum, but that's only for people that haven't met a full condition of release yet.
Okay, hold up, Buster Rhymes, because I've got question number 18 in my list is, should I commence an account-based pension? What is an account-based pension? Why do I need to withdraw a certain percentage? This is all one question, mind you, but I've just put multiple question marks to get into our 25 question limit. But my key point here is, so you've mentioned how you could probably activate it.
Yep.
You do that
Probably
transition.
went forward a step, didn't we?
Yes.
Now we go back one.
But so you've done that. Okay. So account-based pension. It comes to me weekly, monthly, whatever the case.
Yep.
You kind of explain what it is. It's like the money coming out of your super fund and going into your bank account.
And it's this idea of defined contribution versus defined benefit. So historically, all super funds were defined benefit, and you were given a guaranteed income when you finished.
And they were a nightmare for
everyone.
Yeah.
Governments went
bankrupt. It
bankrupt.
sounded good for the individual, but governments, companies, everyone just went bankrupt because they had to provide for their employees.
And in Australia, since the 90s, we've had a defined contribution. And when it says account-based, essentially what that means is your pension is determined by the value of your assets, the savings you've made, and the returns that you've generated.
So fund your own
retirement
fellow, and then you can withdraw a percentage depending on your balance.
Exactly.
We're not paying for it, you're paying for it.
And account-based pension is just the point at which you're converting all the assets that you've saved into the passive income that replaces your salary.
Okay. So imagine I'm listening to this in May or June, any given year. Would you suggest if I'm going to do this and I'm going to activate this, I'm going to write into my super fund and be like, beep, boop, beep, I want to start a pension. Would you suggest that should be commenced on like July 1st, like the new financial year? Is that sensible or is that not a thing? Does it not matter?
Do you only retire on July 1st?
No, but I'm just thinking from like a paperwork kind of perspective.
From an SMSF perspective, that can be beneficial. That being
if you
because
manage your own super,
in a self-managed super fund, you do a set of annual accounts and they're always financial year. So, and you have to know the balance of your super fund and the actual audited balance the day you start the pension. Naturally, that makes sense to do it the day after it's been valued properly by an auditor.
Which is on June 30th.
Yeah, and with less cost. Whereas an industry fund, every other corporate super plan,
they do it for you.
Yeah, daily valued. So for most, you can just commence it when you're ready.
Yeah, so when I retire, bang, done.
Okay. And the minimums apply that's another part of the question, they apply on a financial year basis.
Okay, so like the 4 or 5% or whatever you mentioned before. And then people can look that up, right? There's like a percentage every year of
minimum
your
pension.
age.
Yeah, and it goes up by 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 11, 14. The aim there, and this is a pretty important one to consider, is that the government wants you to withdraw all of your super from that tax-free environment throughout your retirement. Okay. So your super balance should reduce, and at some point you'll have to draw 11% of your balance every year. Yeah. So you're trying to advisors are trying to keep up, trying to manage the money so it's generating more than that. But at some point you will be forced to take more out of the fund. It doesn't mean you have to spend it. You can invest it in a portfolio alongside your super fund, just not in super. And I guess the big reason, so essentially why do you have to draw a minimum? It's because you're getting this massive tax benefit. The quid pro quo.
So the government wants it out of super. Get it out of super. Yeah. Because we're not going to give it everything for tax. Exactly. Otherwise, your portfolio would grow to infinity.
And then people just use it as a inheritance or a asset transfer, wealth transfer mechanism rather than.
No, we're going to talk about that in the last episode. So hold on, mate.
Don't touch on that.
So, okay. So my uncle has an SMSF.
Yep.
Right. And we were talking about this, and he was talking about his investing and da 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 da. He said, from July, my rate's gone up. He's in his 70s. He's like, I'm going to have to withdraw even more, even though his balance is going up because he's a good investor and whatever. So, is it as simple as he is taking that money out of his SMSF account and then popping it over in his bank account?
It's literally like for most of our clients, and this is what they don't quite understand, is that we suggest one bank account within your SMSF, so it's easier to track and audit everything coming out. And essentially, once you've hit retirement, you've condition of release, you can actually treat that like any other bank account.
So you just need to prove at the end of the June 30th, your accountant will go, okay,
$24,000.
Bob's transferred.
You paid a credit card bill. That's a pension payment. Yeah. Like it can be as simple as that. Or you had to put a deposit on, it was in a rush, so we paid it from there.
Doopy-doopy-doo, that all adds up to 5%.
Yeah. And you just allocate it as the pension
that's the minimum. It can go above that, but that's the minimum.
And that's why you pay an SMSF account to do a tax return at the end of the year. They balance that out and make sure you've met the minimum. Your advisor should make sure you've met the minimum beforehand. But they're analysing and adjusting for that at the end of the year.
Okay, that sounds pretty straightforward. Should my investment approach change when I retire? Now, we co-host the Australian Investors Podcast, so we obviously talk about investing a lot, so we don't need to go into huge detail, but this is a good question for anyone to ask their financial advisor as well. Should my investment approach change when I retire?
Completely.
Wow. You telling me I can go into crypto?
Yeah.
Please do not do that. Please do not do that. That was a joke.
It's probably being aware of the fact that most default funds are set up for accumulation and compounding, and they probably taking more risk. Whereas once you hit retirement, every dollar counts. You can't contribute any more to it.
You get anxiety because you've got no salary coming in.
Exactly. Yeah. You need to start, and you're more acutely aware of daily changes in the value of your assets. So how do you limit that? So I think most people need to be focusing on growth, but sustainable income, but sustainable income, as well as being aware of, cost of living is settling, but it's been incredibly challenging in the last few years. So we know that having a finite pool of capital means you have to change your approach. You need to have more diversification than you generally would. You still need to take risks because you don't know how long your superannuation is going to need to last or what's going to happen in your life. But it needs to be rethought completely. Risk for risk's sake isn't relevant in retirement, and you need to build resilience.
Passive income, baby.
Exactly.
Have a focus for your retirement.
And multiple sources of diversified income. Shares,
not
infrastructure,
shares,
real assets,
property.
Term deposits, bonds, credit. Everything is worthy of consideration.
We talked about in the last episode, if you haven't seen it already or heard it, we talked about why property is probably not the best investment in retirement. Like sure it has its place, but it's probably not the best investment for the majority of people that are watching or listening. It's probably not the superior investment for your outcomes, generally speaking. It may, situations vary, but would that be fair to say?
Yeah. We went through that before, didn't we?
Yeah.
I think the risk of property, and this goes back to why you change your investment approach, is that it's a single asset and it has very specific risks associated with it.
Got debt.
Yeah. You can't sell a bathroom.
Yeah.
You can't sell a brick.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have a property and a super fund alongside it, but the income, you can get better income elsewhere, and you can get more resilient and diversified income without the same level of risk.
So a lot of people think when they hear us say this that. And you've mentioned this again and again and again, not just throughout the series, but over time. It's kind of like doing my head in. No, just kidding. You do mention this a lot. When people think it's either shares or property, or sometimes they think there's cash, which it is, but it's not just shares. When you build a portfolio, it's not just shares. It might seem like it's
what everyone pays attention to.
But it's not just shares. There's a whole heap of other things that sit between all these other things. So keep that in mind. The final question for this episode, which is question number 20. Good round number. Should I start an SMSF? So we're probably going a little bit back in time. So this is going from, someone has, account-based pension. They're already on that. They're well and truly on their road. Now we're going back probably 5, 10, 15, 20 years, 30 years. We're coming back.
Credits.
Back to franking credits, post-franking credits, babies. What are the pros and cons of an SMSF? Should I start one? A self-managed super fund.
So as a starting point, SMSFs are under exactly the same tax legislation as other super funds. So the
like
tax
Australian
exemption,
super kind of thing,
the contributions, they're all the same. Big difference is they offer a whole heap of flexibility.
Okay.
So those contributions between each other, there's reserving strategies, there's ability to have multiple pension accounts. So one of the issues with with an industry fund is if you contribute more after you've commenced a pension, you'll have two separate accounts. In an SMSF, you'll still have those separate accounts, but all the assets can be pulled together and invested together and just allocated out accordingly. So there's three benefits of SMSFs. So to be, as I just said, throughout the flexibility.
Yep.
The second one would be control. So you can control every single thing that happens. You can engage an advisor to help with it, or you can control what stocks, what ETFs, what bonds you're buying, how much cash you have in the bank, what income you're producing.
Which bank account.
Exactly, which bank. You can control every part of that. And then one of the biggest things and why we see it as so popular is it's essentially a fixed cost product or structure. So the admin fee on most big super funds is a percentage based. For an SMSF, the base level of fee you pay is a tax return and an audit every year. Usually,
can you give us an example of how much that might cost?
So it's anywhere from like $3,500 to, if you've got property, $6,000 or $7,000 a year. But generally $3,500 or thereabouts.
And the key benefit is that you can have more than one person as a member of that super fund.
Up to 6 people.
So you can share the costs.
Yeah, between the two of you. And that base cost doesn't go up as you have more assets in there. It's going to be the same every year.
So you get massive cost benefits.
Yeah, particularly when the ASIC says anything over 500, we're more like 750.
As an SMSF.
Yeah. And 750 and contributing and more coming is where we'd put that number for SMSFs.
Okay. And can we still hold insurance?
You can hold insurance through SMSFs, and most will set up. In a lot of cases, our clients already have an insurance policy in a corporate super fund, and we'll leave funds there and roll them into an SMSF.
So there's one super fund that covers the insurance.
And one that covers the investments.
Which is the SMSF.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. And
any cons?
The downsides are there can be a lot of paperwork and you have to go through that process at the end of the year, but it's not as bad as what a lot of people say. Like we have a lot of clients coming, there's so much work in an SMSF. A lot of the time people will engage us to take care of that anyway, and they'll get a DocuSign each year. We'll have checked their tax returns and they'll be fine. You have to want control, and it can be more costly depending on what you're doing within the fund. I think one of the biggest issues we've seen is a lot of people set them up with small balances and then attract those costs and never really contribute to them or engage with them, or they're not necessarily engaged enough with the investments and do themselves a disservice and perform poorly. It is a strange and rare environment where you get to control the investment of every dollar you've ever saved without any true oversight. So the downside would be is the opposite of control, which is you need to be engaged to make sure you're getting the best outcomes.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. People do often write into us and say, Drew, what do you got? And then they say, and what do you got? I've got an industry fund. I've been self-employed for a very long time now. I'll probably start an SMSF in the near future. Drew, SMSF?
SMSF and industry fund for insurance.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Once again, we'll direct you for insurance to the insurance episode because it was an absolute cracker. You could listen to 1 hour of insurance information and you'll be good for the rest of your life or just about. So go and check that out. It's in the show notes. At the end of these episodes, I do ask you a quick little kind of like action piece. As this 5-part series has rolled on, I've asked you what would someone in their 50s do, early 60s, mid 60s. In this question, I'm going to ask you if someone is in their late 60s, 60s, they've gone past the golden age, which was, I think 65. I said in the last episode was 60, the happy days, which was 65.
Happy days.
Now they're in their late 60s. What is something that someone could do in their late 60s to help them prepare or manage their retirement?
So one of these could be about legacy, and kind of what we discussed at the beginning was equalization of super balances. There's another strategy you can use, which is withdrawing money and recontributing it. Mm-hmm. For a lot of, as we talked about concessional and non-concessional contributions, you actually have taxable and tax-free components within your super fund. The taxable component isn't taxed when you pay it to your spouse or partner. It is taxed at 15% plus when you pay it to an adult child. So one option would be to, if you have a taxable component, withdraw and recontribute that money. So you're withdrawing a portion of taxable and tax-free, and it's going back in as 100% tax-free or a non-concessional contribution. And that means your adult children, when they inherit at some point in the future, will pay less tax than they otherwise would have.
So if I was, say, in a different world, like maybe call it washing the money, I would effectively be taking the taxable component of my super, which is a bit confusing for people. There's two different types of money.
It's all tax-free if you're over 60.
Yeah. But you can take that bit out that's taxable and then bring it out and then put it back in.
As tax-free.
As tax-free. So then when your kids get it in the future, it doesn't have
they pay less tax.
The dirty money attached to it.
Yeah.
So you can see the analogy that I'm making. No, I'm kidding. But you can see that. Okay. So in this episode, we covered how do you actually commence a pension. That was pretty straightforward, and surprisingly, that's probably confusing a lot of people, but it actually makes a lot of sense hearing you talk about it. Should the investment approach change? Yes, says Drew. In the next episode, we're going to take a step forward, and we're going to say, how do I protect my kids, my family, my partner? How do I manage super when I'm not here? What happens? Who does it? Do I protect them now? Should I give money to a charity, and how would I do that? We're going to talk about philanthropy and that type of thing in the next episode, which is the 5th and final installment of this retirement series here on the Australian Investors Podcast. Drew, it's always a pleasure to chat to you. You've got your book, The Golden Years with Jamie. That's available at all good bookstores. Maybe a link in the show notes for folks. Heaps of information available. You can head to the link that also says financial planning and get connected or matched with a financial advisor. If you do want these 25 questions in a nice little PDF, something you can take to your financial advisor with some resources, there is a link to create a free Rask account. It's totally free, and you access heaps of reports. You can jump in the community, ask a financial advisor some questions, do all that sort of stuff. That's all available inside your free Rask account. If you like this series, please let us know on YouTube or use the feedback on Spotify or Apple. Just leave us a review or just email us, because we can do heaps more of these. In fact, Drew was thinking maybe my 2024 financial year goal will be start a YouTube channel. He's got some big ambitions, this fella. So let us know what you think. And Drew, it's always an absolute pleasure. From Wattle Partners, thanks for joining me.
Good to see you.
Thanks for watching this video on the Rask Network. While you're here, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can get videos each and every day on business, finance, investing, and so much more.